intention of spreading hip-hop, for example, by virtue of showing up to their jobs every day. It's assisted hip-hop in spreading. And that's how markets work, not just with hip-hop, with any industry. There's also another form, kind of the same concept, called spontaneous order by Friedrich Hayek. And he said, many of the greatest things man has achieved are not the result of consciously directed thought, and still less the product of a deliberately coordinated effort of many individuals, but of a process in which the individual plays a part which he can never fully understand. What, go back to the dictionary. Think of all the words we use when we're talking. It wasn't like a government or one man said, okay, we're going to use all these words and here's how we're going to communicate. It was spontaneous order of men over time and women using different words to communicate with each other, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and that became our language. Spontaneous order. Well, as hip-hop spread, it assumed different styles. Here you have Cypress Hill to the left, we have De La Soul to the right. Here's some of the hip-hop that came out of the West Coast where I live. We had World-Class Wrecking Crew. How many of you guys know who that is in the red? That's Dr. Dre. Yeah, Dr. Dre. He looked pretty cheesy back then. Well, World-Class Wrecking Crew is really, really good too. You should check them out. They're a lot like Zapp and Roger. And they all look mean, but they're all capitalist teddy bears. We had NWA, which came out in the late 80s, early 90s. And we had Death Row Records. Everybody knows who Tupac and Snoop Dogg is. And that came out in the early 90s and mid-90s. We had West Coast Chicano rap, which is what I primarily grew up around. Like, if you went to the stores by our house, this is all they sell. They didn't sell other types of rap, because my city is 80% Latino, right? So this is what we listen to. Well, we had Kid Frost come out, East LA. We had Brownside, who Eazy-E actually signed because he wanted to make a Chicano version of NWA. So they came out of South Los Angeles. And then we had Little Rob, who came out of San Diego. So it is funny, because they're about as big as NWA in the Chicano community. Midwest, here's some, of course there's more Godfathers, I'm just kind of narrowing it down to a few, but Do or Die, Bone Thugs and Harmony, Twista. This might bring back some memories for some of you guys who are close to my age, right? I still like Bone. Their early stuff was good. Southern hip-hop, the Ghetto Boys, Outkast, Master P. Master P's, one of his biggest songs was actually a remake of a World-Class Wrecking Crew song, right? Master P made the song called Ice Cream Man. It was a remake of Turn Out the Lights by World-Class Wrecking Crew. So I want to show you the contrast between different styles of hip-hop. Because the fact of the matter is, 3 6 Mafia would not have been popular in East LA. And Kid Frost and Brownside would not have been popular in Memphis. What the market did is it tailored hip-hop towards specific areas of the country. And that's part of what the market does. It can tailor and complement certain demographics according to their needs. So when you're listening, I put 2 examples from each area of the country. And I want you to listen to the contrast between different areas of the country and see how hip-hop assumed a different style in each area depending on the demographic, okay? It's your boy right here, man. He's from your backyard. So here we go. We just heard 2 East Coast examples. Now we're going to hear 2 West Coast examples. Hear the difference in terms of what they're rapping about. It's already more laid back, huh?
On the curb, watching the ghetto bird helicopters. I observed so many homies getting 3 strikes, tossed to jail.
This is my boy right here, Little Rob. So on the West Coast, they're rapping a lot about cars, right? Cars and sunny weather. You can't do that in New York because they don't have sunny weather. Midwest, lots of fast rapping, right? A lot faster than the West Coast. One Dogs in Harmony, also fast rapping. That was just a trait of the early Midwest hip hop scene. You guys remember this song? Have you heard this song? There you go. Crossroads. There you go. Southern hip hop. Club music, man. They made lots of club music. The beats are quicker. They're not 4/4 timelines. California raps about women and cars and weather. The South raps about going to the club. Here's some more Southern hip hop. You gotta love Outkast.
The quickest muzzle, throw it on my mouth and I'll decline. King meets queen, then the puppy love thing. Together, bring back that creel with the slippiest swing.
Alright, so how many here heard the differences between the different sections of the country? Right? Well, that's what hip hop did. It tailored to the market. The market allowed hip hop to change like water according to where that water was and just kind of blend and complement. Because if it hadn't, it wouldn't have lasted in different areas of the country. Is it okay if I go a little bit over? Yeah. Okay, I'll try not to. I just went a little bit longer than I meant to. 1988, we saw the creation of the very first hip hop magazine, and you can just see the growth of that magazine over a couple intervals. 1988, it looked like a pamphlet you'd find at a restaurant. But look at it in 1998 and 2008, it's a full-fledged magazine. You saw the growth of that. Well, the result of that was competitor magazines. Remember how Thomas Sowell earlier said that competition breeds choice? Well, you had other magazines that came out that wanted to compete with that magazine. They wanted to report on hip-hop better, more effectively. So the result was multiple magazines. We had XXL, Murder Dog, Vibe, SM. Actually, if you look closely, you'll see my name right here on the cover. So I wrote a story once on Tupac. So, how market principles continue to sustain hip-hop. What kind of market tools does it take just to record a hip-hop song? Well, think about what it takes to design and build a recording studio, which requires construction companies, masons, engineers, and architects. Now, some might say, well, we have home recording equipment. We can just record from my computer now. It still takes companies, masons, engineers, and architects to build your apartment, right? All these things are still very relevant. Once constructed, these recording studios, they command the presence of mixing boards, microphones, monitors, preamps, limiters, compressors, each item manufactured by a different company, excelling in a different, distinct area of recording, just so someone can record a hip-hop song.
Thank you.
Think about all the individuals it takes just to master a song. People might record songs in their apartments now with technology, but they still have to go to people who specialize in mastering, engineering, things like that. It's a select set of skills, which is what the market is all about. People have a select set of skills that they offer in exchange for money, for example. But how would hip-hop fans continue to access and listen to hip-hop? Well, that still takes more tools. Hip-hop can't last if people aren't buying it, but how are they going to buy it? They need other businesses to assist them in that. Think about the millions of record players, tape players, CD players, MP3 players, all made by different companies and computers it takes just so you can download one hip-hop song. Just one, just so you can hear a hip-hop song for 5 minutes. Think about the millions of pairs of headphones, earbuds, and 1.4 jacks, individually and meticulously designed to be exercised in conjunction with one another. Think about the millions of retailers across the world it takes to voluntarily carry these millions of record players, tape players, CD players, and whatnot. They're not being forced to carry hip-hop CDs, right? They're doing it because it's advantageous. It's in their self-interest to make money. It's in the self-interest of those recording those albums to make money. So it's a mutual exchange of goods. There's some other online businesses, obviously. You can download things. Just because everything's gone to the internet doesn't mean that companies aren't still playing a role. More so, in fact, I would argue. Well, by the mid-1990s, hip-hop was so successful that many artists started transitioning from behind a microphone to behind a mahogany desk, and you see a few. Russell Simmons never really rapped, but I have him up there because he's really important. We have Jay-Z, P. Diddy, Russell Simmons, all really notable hip-hop CEOs. So let's look at Russell Simmons here. Russell Simmons co-founded Def Jam Records in 1983. He launched legendary hip-hop artists like Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, and LL Cool J. Who knows if those guys ever would have come into the mainstream public if it weren't for Russell Simmons signing them. He founded Def Comedy Jam. He signed Chris Rock and Martin Lawrence. Who knows what this would be like, the comedy scene, without Chris Rock. Like, he's one of the biggest comedians around. He founded a clothing line, Fat Farm. Well, the result was it created thousands of jobs across the country. When you go to a mall that sells Fat Farm, well, those employees are selling those things. They're all employees. They're getting paid to sell those products. Created jobs. And it also brought other people up and enabled them to become successful, start their own business adventures, and also bring their friends along with them. Jay-Z was one of them. Russell Simmons signed Jay-Z. Jay-Z made a bunch of money and then went out and started his own businesses. Now he's chief executive, Def Jam and Rockefeller Records. He co-owns a number of sports bars. He started his own, he's even competing with Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons had Fat Farm, he went and founded Rockaware. He's part owner of a freaking sports team, an entire basketball team. He went from nothing to owning a basketball team because the market allowed him to do it. It didn't give it to him, he had to work for it. You have to work for things. I don't know, that's a good question.
And he married Beyonce, that's.
What's that? And he married Beyonce. There's the incentive for all the guys in here. Right. Here's just a few other hip-hop CEOs. I'll look that up, though. I'm curious about that. We have Community, we have Master P, who founded his own record label. Dr. Dre, who signed Aftermath Records and, of course, signed Eminem. And can you picture really hip-hop without Eminem right now? Forbes magazine that came out, actually, had 4 rappers on its 400 richest citizens list. And Dr. Dre, Birdman, Jay-Z, and 50 Cent. All the result of free market economy. Can you picture that, like 10 years ago, even 15 years ago? This is just a really basic example. You have Dr. Dre, who was originally signed to Interscope Records. Well, he worked a deal with Interscope Records. He said, hey, I'm going to start my own record deal. Let's work together. They said, okay. So he started Aftermath Records. What did Aftermath Records do? They signed Eminem. Eminem made a bunch of money, said, hey, I'm going to start my own record business and also work with Interscope. So he started Shady Records. Well, Shady Records signed 50 Cent. Can you picture rap without 50 Cent? 50 Cent went out and started his own boxing promoting company. He started G-Unit Clothing. He started his own audio company. You see there's actually 30 to 40 different MCs and producers that have all been signed through Aftermath and Eminem. These are all jobs. And this is it's actually a lot more complex than this. You're talking thousands and thousands of people that are working together to put one album out. So that's indicative of how a market works. It's really, even though they're looking out for their self-interest, it takes cooperation. People are working together. It's not selfish. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about magistrates and future hip-hop, and I'm almost through here. I want you to consider the following. Could hip-hop as we know it today have been possible without an economy that allowed products to be complemented, refined, and made better? Could any one man or government have rightfully determined and differentiated? Do you think this guy up here, he's not in office anymore, but do you think he knew that the West Coast wanted to hear Tupac and New York wanted to hear Biggie Smalls? You think that guy has a clue? He doesn't have a clue. That's what I mean when I talk about government coercion, government being involved in economic issues. The market will decide. Could any one piece of legislation yeah, predicted or determined the different variations of hip-hop. We just said that. And could the evolution of hip-hop been possible in communist Cuba, socialist Venezuela, or Europe? Well, the answer is no, but it's there now. But it couldn't have gotten where it started and where it is now in those systems. I want you to look at what a free economy looks like and what a planned economy looks like. Anybody know what countries he's talking about?
North Korea, South Korea.
Oh man, you guys are good. I guess that's more dollars for you guys, remind me. So South Korea has a freer market than North Korea. Look how much brighter it is. Look at all that industry. Lots of business. North Korea is really kind of dismal. All they have is their capital. That's a satellite image of a planned economy versus a freer economy. How one can thrive and one can't. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about hip-hop. Why does this relate to the Beatles, you're wondering? I always have to throw in the Beatles. And I'm almost done here. The Beatles, in recent years, have been credited with contributing to the fall of communism through their music. And I'll read you a quote here, actually by a Russian historian. He said, "The Beatles not only did more to bring about the destruction of communism than any Nobel Prize winner, they alienated a whole generation of young, well-educated, urban Soviet kids from their communist motherland. The West spent millions on undermining communism, where it had much less impact than the Beatles did." And the Soviet Union knew this. They banned the Beatles from Russia. They didn't like the freedom that the music talked about, because they felt it might undermine what they were about. So, now, Russia has a shrine to the Beatles. They're popular in the people love the Beatles because they help play a role in liberating the country. Well, here's why this matters. Because now we're seeing hip-hop do the same thing. Hip-hop is rock and roll 40, 50 years ago. Cuba, places like Cuba and Venezuela and a lot of countries that they don't want hip-hop there because it's a danger to them, the freedom that it talks about. So we see how it's taken hold in Cuba now, starting to liberate those at the bottom. We see it in China. And we see it in Iran. To rap in Iran, you have to get a license from the culture ministry. They have to give you a license in order to rap. You can get killed for playing rock and roll in Iran. It's punishable by death. They do it underground. There's a really good documentary called, I'm talking about Iraq, but it's called Rock and Roll in Baghdad or something like that. And there's a whole underground movement of people that go and play music at night, but they get caught. So, hip-hop has had an effect on, or it's taken the same effect that rock and roll did. I want to read you something really quick before I let you go. I've always been fascinated by time. It's kind of a weird thing to be fascinated by. But I picked up a Scientific American not long ago, and it was entirely dedicated to time. And I think it's really relevant to where you guys are in your lives. And I want you to think about what I'm reading here, and think about how it applies to you. Think about what you're going to do as you get ready to go into college and move on. Time heals all wounds, but it is also the great destroyer. Time is relative, but also relentless. There is time for every purpose under heaven, but there's never enough. Time flies, crawls, and races. Seconds can be both split and stretched. Like the tide, time waits for no man, but in dramatic moments, it also stands still. Time is as personal as the pace of one's heartbeat, yet as public as the clock tower in Times Square. And of course, time is money. It is the partner of change, the antagonist of speed, the currency for which we pay attention. It is our most precious, irreplaceable commodity, yet we still say we don't know where it goes. We sleep away a third of it, and none of us can really count for how much we have left. We can find 100 ways to save time, but the amount remaining nonetheless diminishes steadily. So I want to encourage you guys to take advantage of the time you have now at the age you are. Don't put your dreams or your hopes or your aspirations on the back burner. Each of you is more than the world will try to make you out to be. I know this from my own experience because I was 17 when I dropped out of high school. I had to learn the hard way. And I'm telling you that you guys are all really, really bright, talented individuals. Just the fact that you showed up today says so much about you guys. because I never would have done it. So I wanted